Hill Avenue was and is a quiet suburban street in Cumberland Park, a stone's throw from the Cabra Dominican convent and school. Yet violence would intrude on this serene inner southern suburb of Adelaide early on the morning of the 11th of November 1975. Remembrance Day. At about 2 a.m, a resident of Hill Avenue named Beasley was awoken by a prowler trying to break into his house through a side window. When he switched a light on, the person ran off. A house in a nearby street was also broken into during that night. Beasley was able to get enough of a look at the prowler that he could later give a rough description to police. Later that morning, Mr. Beasley awoke, and when he ventured into his front yard, he expected to see his neighbour across the road, at number 12, out watering her well-maintained garden, as usual in the warmer weather. Mrs. Mary Una Lockyer was very fond of gardening and stitching needlework aprons. The 82-year-old lady went by her second name, Una, but her neighbour would call out, "Good morning, Lockie," and she would respond with a cheerful wave. Lockie, as she was called by all who knew her, was considered by her neighbours a friendly and sprightly woman. She wasn't about in her garden this morning. Well, not that Beasley could see. Mark Wilson was 74 and boarded in a small detached flat at the back of Mrs. Lockyer's home. He too expected to see her up and about. Although there was less than a decade in difference in their ages, Una Lockyer treated Mark like a son. At around 9 a.m, he went to the main house and called out to her. He repeated his calls a few times and wondered where the old lady could be. If she was still in bed, maybe she wasn't feeling well. Mark went to her room to find her. She was there, and when he saw her, he left in shock to go and find some help. His friend lay dead in her bed. It was obvious that her death had been a vicious one. Police were soon on the scene, and the officer in charge of the investigation, Chief Inspector Turner, said that considering the age of the victim, it was one of the most brutal killings he had seen. The walls and ceilings had been liberally splashed with blood. The post-mortem examination revealed that Una Lockyer had been savagely bashed about the face. Both her eyes were blackened and swollen, and small cuts and bruises were all over her bloodied face. In addition, she had been stabbed 6 times in the chest. The murder weapon lay on her chest, a pair of scissors. The blades had been used to stab her, the handle to bludgeon her. She had also been sexually assaulted, possibly raped by her attacker. Piecing together what had occurred under cover of darkness, it was established that the assailant had broken into the house by climbing through a window. Although Una had locked her bedroom door, her killer had kicked his way into the room. Following the slaying, the murderer then entered a second unoccupied bedroom. Bloodstains were found on the light switch and on the inside door frame. Mary Una Thomas was born at Leasingham, a small town in the Clare Valley north of Adelaide, on the 28th of November 1892. She married Ernest Lockyer in 1913, and they had 2 children, Ronald, born in 1914, and Merle, who arrived in 1916. Una had lived in the house on Hill Avenue for about 60 years. Her husband, from whom she was divorced, had passed away in 1971. Una's younger brother Claude, who lived in a nearby suburb, said that his sister had recently had painting and tiling done in the house, which cost $1,000. She always had some money in the house and would freely chat with people about her private business and how much money she had. He worried that this openness would cause her trouble one day. Una would have turned 83 a couple of weeks after her murder, and her granddaughter was preparing a birthday party for her. Although her brother believed the killer was after money, police believed that it was a crime motivated by sex. With the evidence available, they were confident that a quick arrest would be made. On the afternoon of the 12th of November, a 17-year-old youth appeared in the juvenile court, charged with the murder of Una Lockyer. The law of South Australia forbids the publication of the names of offenders under the age of 18, except in exceptional circumstances, and so the young man's identity remained concealed for the time being. The trial was conducted in February 1976. The youth explained that he had drunk a lot of alcohol and had then purchased some LSD, which he had taken prior to breaking into Una's home. He had broken into her room only to steal money and had attacked her because she would not stop yelling. He claimed he could not remember the murder, only picking something up and swinging it. He said most of what he knew of the case came from newspaper reports and from what a friend had told him. A jury of 10 men and 2 women took just over an hour to deliberate and returned with a finding of guilty. Due to the severity of the crime, the judge, Justice Jacobs, released the killer's name. He was Michael Paul Barron of Ranelagh Street, Glengowrie. He would turn 18 in a few weeks' time, but it would be in custody. Barron was sentenced to the McNally Training Centre, a reformatory for boys aged 15 to 18 at McGill, until the governor's pleasure was known. By the time the reformatory was closed down in 2012 for being in an appalling condition, Barron had no doubt long since regained his freedom.